Welcome to Series 6 of Artist Tales. There are 10 episodes featuring a wonderfully diverse set of artists from very different backgrounds, all creating some amazing artwork with very different stories to tell. In this episode of Artist Tales, I'm joined by Luke Adamson and Ellie Ward, the artistic director and executive director of the Bridge House Theatre. This small but fiercely ambitious venue has become a South London home for bold storytelling and community centre performances. Under Luke and Ellie's leadership, it has grown into a space where emerging voices are championed, local audiences are welcomed with genuine warmth, and independent theatre is encouraged to take creative risks. Welcome, Luke and Ellie.
Good evening.
Hi.
Well, it's wonderful having you on this podcast, because you're actually my local Fringe theatre. You both and the venue, not far from me. So could you tell me a bit more about yourself and the theatre itself?
Absolutely. Well, if Ellie doesn't mind, I'll kick off, because I took over running the theatre at the Bridge House in Penge in 2021. Before that, I'd been the associate director up at the Hope Theatre in Islington. And I was aware of the theatre at the Bridge House, but I'd never really... It seemed to be a little bit inconsistent. And then I discovered during one of the COVID lockdowns that the previous management of the theatre were moving on. And it was Guy, the previous artistic director, put me in touch with the managers of the pub. And I came in and sort of made a proposal to them and said, this is what I'd like to do. This is my vision for a Fringe theatre, very much running in the way that the Hope ran when I was there. And I wanted it to have a focus on underrepresented voices that are traditionally underrepresented in the arts. And we sort of came to an agreement that we'd give it a go. And we gave it a go in 2021, and we're still here and we're thriving. And Ellie joined the team in 2020. What year are we now? 2024? Was it you joined the team? You came to us in 2024.
Yeah, so I'd written a play and sent it to Luke at the Bridge House in 2024, and the play ended up premiering at the Bridge House in November 2024. And by coincidence, I'd moved to the area shortly before, just as the autumn 2024 season was starting. And I don't know, you'll have to ask Luke, but my theory is he just could not get rid of me, because I fell in love with it, was down all the time, watching absolutely everything. Then I had my show on, and then went to go and watch the amazing pantomime over Christmas, and was on my way out, and Luke said to me, "Oh, can we catch up and have a chat?" I was like, "God, what did I break when we were there?" And then Luke asked me to come on board initially as programming assistant, because the programming assistant at the time was moving on, and then shortly afterwards associate director. So that's how I came on board.
So it sounds like it's been a kind of fairly big project since you took it over, Luke. And Ellie, you seem to be kind of fast moving into being involved, which is excellent. I mean, I know that theatre because it's been running for some time, and it seems to be quite well established. So Ellie and I were chatting a little bit before we started recording, and it sounds like it's just building up. So it seems like it's going from strength to strength. So could you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, we certainly like to think it's going from strength to strength. We were sort of lucky in that we took it over sort of on the back of a pandemic, because we had nothing to compare it to. I know sort of people that were running venues pre-pandemic, during pandemic and post-pandemic, they can compare what their audiences were like pre-pandemic. But we sort of had a clean slate when we took over to really put our stamp on the place. And so we renovated the theatre space, fresh seating, lighting, a new rig. And we, for the first 6 months or so, once we'd reopened, we took over in the February, reopened to the public in the September of 2021. And so for the first sort of 6 months or so, we could really take programming risks and go, well, we'll try that, see what happens. We'll try that, see what happens. And we always wanted from the start to be the most welcoming Fringe theatre you would find, both for the audiences and for the companies coming in doing the shows. And I think that stood us in good stead because we have so many companies that come back to work with us again and again and again, which is great because they bring good work. And so when you find companies and artists that are making good quality work, you want them to come back and you want them to have a good time and want to come back. And as we got into our stride, we found we're getting lots of submissions. You know, we would never just take any old show. Like, it has to fit our programming policy. And even within that, you get so many submissions that you go, okay, which ones are we going to choose? How do we balance a season? And we're in a position now where we're getting such good quality submissions. We're getting really good shows coming to us. That the word is getting out about the quality of what we do. And we've got so many people that we see again and again and again coming to see the shows. We've got our membership scheme that's constantly growing, which is really nice. And our work is being recognised. You know, we're winning awards for the shows. We're winning awards. At the London Pub Theatre Awards back in October last year, we won a commendation for excellence because of our sort of community outreach, the stuff we do specifically for the people of Penge and the surrounding areas. So it's really nice that the work is being noticed, not just locally, but on a bigger scale as well.
And how are the audience reacting to performances? And I'm kind of looking at both of you, actually. And Ellie, I know you've written some plays for the theatre as well, so I'm kind of directing the question to both of you, really.
Well, we're always thrilled with the reactions that we get from really loyal audiences. I know we were speaking before, weren't we, Heather, about how we're so lucky because we do have such a loyal crowd that come back time and time again, and a huge range of demographics, from literally tiny children and babies that come and watch the pantomime right up until older demographics, and all within that range. And I think from my perspective, since I've joined, I've seen a real kind of increase in the variety of shows that we're able to programme. I mean, in this season alone, there really is going to be something for everybody, from plays about the situation with kind of county lines and gang violence in schools in South London, capitalism and gentrification, another play about our attitudes to pregnancy. We're able to grow our audiences because there really is something for everybody there. In my own personal experience of writing it, I mean, I've always been absolutely thrilled with the way that the theatre just kind of supports sort of post-show discussion, the community that we build, so people will approach the creatives involved in the shows and we can speak about how we made it, and everybody feels really involved. In terms of the creatives that we work with, we always talk about being the Bridge House family, and people will come back and work with us time and time again. And if you've been in a show with us, the chances are you'll be back to do something. And if anybody needs anything, probably we know somebody that can do that. So we're a family, we're a community, and we're constantly growing. So obviously we hope that the audiences like the shows and will react to the shows, but really it's for them that we do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think jumping in on that family thing, we really do take that seriously, both amongst the creatives, but also amongst the audiences. And for both Ellie and I, it's important that we are present in the theatre. And, you know, we are the faces of the Bridge House Theatre. Well, me, Ellie and Dusty, of course. And people see us and they know us, and the wonderful front of house team that we have, and Tom, our technical associate. People that come regularly to the theatre are getting to know us, and they will see us in the bar before a show or after a show and come and speak to us. And because they know us, they feel a bit more like they have some kind of relationship with the space, a bit of sense of ownership of the space. And that's exactly as we want it to be. We want people to be able to approach us and say, oh, I really liked such and such a show, or, oh, I'm gutted I missed XYZ show. And our recent season launch is a great example of people from the local area that just came along, you know, just to learn about what was coming up and to meet me and Ellie in person. And, I learned a lot of names of people that I recognized their faces, and I could finally put a name to a face, and vice versa. People are like, oh, we've seen you around, or we knew that Luke was the artistic director and Ellie was the associate director, but we didn't know who you were, but now we do. And that sort of personal touch is important to us as well. We're not just some faceless sort of management team that sit in an office, and, we care about it. And I think that comes across to our audiences, and they care about us in return.
And I think that's so important because, if you go to the West End or some of the bigger theatres, it's not practical for that level, of intimacy maybe, or that community level. And it's a very different experience. And okay, you probably do have a different, expectation because it's a bigger performance. But is that making it personal, making it the community that sounds like, people really react to that and sort of, want to engage and want to support you?
Absolutely. And I took my cues very much from a chap called Damien Cruden, who was the artistic director at York Theatre Royal, and his belief and his stressing the importance of community. He was very much visible, and the regular audience members knew him, and members of the youth theatre knew him, and he was this figure that built this wonderful community. So I'm very much, he's the reason I got into acting in the first place, and I very much want to build at the Bridge House something similar to what they had there. And I think it's really starting to pay dividends, and it's lovely to meet so many people and to be able to, call people friends now that I only met because of the theatre.
I was just about to say I've got so many friends, and just jumping off the back of what Luke said about how Damien really inspired him to work in theatre. I think, I've been inspired by lots of people, but I guess what I feel, and I think probably I speak for Luke as well here, is that we want to be the people that say yes, because this industry is so full of no, you can't do this, you can't do that. I've experienced that, as all creatives have throughout my childhood and career. There'll be a reason why you can't, and we want to find the reason why you can. If you're a great person, if you're creative, if you've got ideas, if you want to make a difference socially to the community, if you've got a good head on your shoulders, then we want you to be part of the family, and we want to help you do what you want creatively, or if not, being part of the audience. Come and
I guess you're going to be a friend either way, aren't you?
Yeah, honestly, I've lost count of the amount of times now that I've found myself somewhere. Even just the other day, I was out for a drink with a huge group of friends, and I was thinking, I met you through the Bridge House because you came to watch my show, and then now and really, honestly, genuine friendships have been made, and I know that's the same.
I can imagine that's quite important for the other side as well. Of yes, you're my friend from the Bridge House. What I'm also hearing is, I guess, two things. And as Luke, you said earlier, that when you're trying to pull together a season, you're getting a lot of stuff through, and you're trying to balance sort of the season with different voices, I guess, and different opportunities, different experiences, but also picking up with what Ellie said about saying yes. And to me, I'm hearing what you're trying to do is create opportunities for people, because I think I don't think it's just theatre. I think there's a lot in the arts world where it's a no. You're not good enough. You're not good enough in quotes. You're not this, or you're not that. You're not fitting whatever the scheme. And I don't know, it sounds like it's really important for you guys to create those opportunities for people to break into the industry.
Absolutely. The first thing we said when myself and my previous business partner took over at the theatre, because we came from a background of making our own work, we wanted to be the theatre that got rid of all the hidden obstacles and barriers and hurdles that we'd faced as theatre makers. Because there probably are courses that you can do now that you have to pay a lot of money to go and do to learn how to get your work from idea to performance. But certainly when we were starting out, it was very much like, we're just doing this. We're getting on with it. We've got a script. We've got an idea. We've got a keen cast. Let's do it. And so we're very much like when a company comes to us, they might be fresh out of drama school or university. They might be a group of friends that have come together that are doing something. And what they've got is a really great show. They've got no idea how to do marketing or lighting design or sound design or anything like that. So we've got a few years experience of that. We're going to make it possible for them to do the show without having to stress about those kind of things. In removing those roadblocks, in saying, don't worry about what you don't know, bring us what you do know, and what you do know is the creative stuff. What you do know is your show. And, there are times that we have to sort of turn around and say, this piece isn't quite right for us, if it doesn't fit the programming criteria, or if we feel a script perhaps needs a bit more development before we could program it. And we always try to be constructive in that respect. I mean, one thing that we're very keen on is we will always get back to anybody that emails us one way or another. It's unfortunately sort of endemic in our industry that you put a lot of time and effort into creating something, whether it's going for an audition, writing a submission, going for an interview, anything like that. And then you just never hear anything. And it's so disrespectful. And we make it a point that we will always get back to people. And even if we feel the show isn't a right fit for us at this point, we will explain that is the case, rather than just leaving people not knowing what's going on. But part of the joy is taking chances on these enthusiastic new companies or young companies that have, the makings of a brilliant show, but are taking their first steps and they're, quite tentative. The joy is getting behind them and going, yes, okay, what do you want? Let's do it. It's exciting for us. It's exciting for them. We're not there to say, oh, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. Where's the fun in that? Creativity is about experimenting. And what I always say when we have meetings with potential companies is we want to be a place where you can take creative risks without taking financial risks. And that's the main thing, is that sort of that financial barrier that so many artists face. If we can say, look, we're doing it on a box office split in your favour, the more tickets we sell, the more everyone benefits. We're invested in selling the show. You're invested in selling the show. No money changes hands up front. We're not charging you a higher fee. It's not, we get our money, bish, bash, bosh, we're done, we're happy, we don't care how the show does, like some fringe venues operate. We're invested, and we're invested in making the shows as good as they can be. It's very often I am there during the get-ins and the technical rehearsals and the dress rehearsal. And if I feel that I can offer something in a creative capacity to elevate the show, then I'll do that. And the same with Ellie. She'll sit and watch rehearsals and things and offer feedback, because it benefits everybody in the long run. And I learned my technical skills from, being around other people while they were doing it. And certainly other people have learned from being around me while I'm doing it. Tom, our technical associate now, he, has learned from working with me on shows in the past, and now feels comfortable running a tech session himself, and quite often goes now and freelances as a technician elsewhere. And he's learned that from doing it on the job. And creatives as well will learn, they'll expand their horizons and pick up skills and things that they didn't necessarily have by doing it, by being creative, by bringing a show, not through having to pay a load of money out to go and do a course. So I've whittled on for ages there, but I think it is about opening those gates, if you like, rather than throwing up obstacles. If I had to sum up the last rabbiting minutes that I've just done.
No, I think it's what you said is well said. And, things coming up for me are, you're not gatekeeping, you're encouraging. And it touches on something that Ellie and I were chatting about before we started recording, in terms of, probably more often in Fringe theatre, you have these opportunities to experiment, to try new things, to push the boundaries, because some of the West End or mainstream ones, they perhaps have bigger costs, or they're things that they have to play it a little bit, perhaps a bit more safe. So it's really quite refreshing to have a setting in an organization where it's like, yeah, let's try something. Let's push those boundaries. And it's quite exciting. I think both for you, the people, regardless if they're new or a bit more experienced, and also audiences.
Absolutely. And that's the way it should be in my mind anyway. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in seeing another musical adaptation of an 80s film, personally. What I am interested in is some really exciting new writing that examines, the life that we're living and the challenges we face and the joys of what we do. And so because we've got a space and the Bridge House pub are so lovely and so supportive of what we do, that we've got a space that we can take those risks. And
it's amazing as well, just from my point of view, what you can learn just from being in the space, not whether it's from Luke or anybody else, not even probably intentionally saying something that's taught me, but I feel like I've learned so much about myself as a creative just from watching other people work and thinking, oh, I could do that. And hopefully our community feel the same way. And it's not just the shows as well. It's the other kind of sides of what we do. We work with two brilliant actresses, Sarah Finnegan and Katie Morgan, who run something called Off the Page, which is every other month. And they will bring along local professional actors, really, really amazing actors, to read a new piece of work, whether that's for stage, screen or radio. There'll be an invited audience. It'll be open to the public, and they'll do feedback forms and listen to the play being read, and the writer will be invited to ask them specific questions about whatever it is that they need to take their work to the next stage and the next level. Quite often, I don't know if this would be, Luke, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but quite often work that's come through Off the Page will then come to us when it's been developed a little bit further.
That's definitely happened, yeah. And but also gone on to even, shows that have been developed through as part of their development. They've done Off the Page, they've gone on at the Hampstead Theatre, or they've gone on to be commissioned at the BBC and things like that. So it's a vital thing, again, at no cost to the writer of these scripts. It's a kind of thing that they get a bit of free feedback, and the audience can pay what they decide based on their own financial situation or what they thought of the play and things like that. So it is another opportunity for development, for learning, for growth, which I think is, it's a vital thing that we do. I'm really pleased that early on in the Bridge House journey, Katie and Sarah came to us and said, we're a couple of local creatives, can we do this? And my mantra,
and
yes, why not?
Happening.
Let's give it a go.
Sorry, Ellie.
No, I was just going to add that we've got a youth theatre as well that do shows in the space, so they get the opportunity to work with the tech, with the sound, with the lights. We also do workshops, and I think just like Luke was saying, anybody that's got an idea, anybody that's wanting to work proactively and creatively, if we can do it. Obviously, inevitably, there's times where we can't for whatever practical reason there might be, but we want to invite all these people in, just like Luke did.
And I'm glad you've mentioned that, because I was going to ask you about, Luke, you mentioned earlier about the community sort of outreach, and I presume that's probably part of the community outreach part of things. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like some of these schemes are quite important, particularly in the early development of people's careers, or even young people to get that experience, that opportunity. Because I think growing up, in my mind, it's really important for young people to try new things, to try things, even if they don't necessarily pursue them. They've had that experience, and you never know, they could come back to it, or what skills they're picking up that they're going to take elsewhere in their life. And I think it's those kind of life skills for everybody, really. But also the other thing that keeps popping up in my mind with some of these schemes and some of the work you're doing is networking. It's that exposure, it's that, not only exposure whether you're a young person or starting out in your career, but kind of getting that feedback, meeting people, getting exposure for your work and that sort of thing. And, how important is that, do you think, for people in the industry and people trying to break into theatre and the performing arts?
I think it's very important. They do always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'm trying to sort of move away from that. It doesn't matter if you know me, if you've got a good idea or a good show or whatever, then let's work together. But it's the connections you make. And I think a perfect example of that is we work with a company called British Touring Shakespeare. They've been coming to us once a year since we opened with their Gothic adaptation. They always do. Over the summer, they tour outdoors, and they do a Shakespeare and they do an adaptation of a Gothic story, novel, novella. And they've been bringing their shows to us every year since we opened. There's another company called Stage Door that we've worked with a lot, and they've recently just done the Legacy of William Island with us. And they're another fantastic company. And through being at the Bridge House and being part of the Bridge House community, the director from British Touring Shakespeare found out that he had a lot in common with the writer of a lot of the Stage Door shows. And so in this season, we've got a collaboration between ourselves, Stage Door, and British Touring Shakespeare. We're all working together on a big 3-week run. Another thing that came out of it was Penge West, was this ridiculous idea that Tim, the writer from Stage Door, and Johnny Hanscom, that runs Good Wolf People, which is a local community theatre company. So that's people that have full-time jobs and do the acting as an evening thing or a part-time thing. They do shows based on local sort of history. We had the 100-Year-Old Letter. They're doing a show about Joseph Paxton coming up. But Johnny, that runs Good Wolf, and Tim came up with this idea of doing a theatre soap opera. And we made it work. It was a crazy idea, but we threw it out to local actors and went, if you want to get involved in this absolutely ridiculous notion of a continuing narrative over multiple nights across a 3-week period, let us know. And there's a part for everybody who wants a part. And we must have had 30, 40 odd actors all involved in Penge West at some point, because people think it's an absolutely mad idea and it's a lot of fun. And it's become this weird sort of cult hit. And we did series 1, if you like, in June last year. And it went so well that for the final show, we were pretty much sold out. We did the finale episode and it was sold out. So we thought we'd better bring it back as a Christmas episode. We did a Christmas special. And that sold out in like October. So we had to add a second performance of the Penge West Christmas special on the same night that also sold 30-odd tickets in our 50-seat theatre. And now we're bringing it back for season 2. And it came out of a lot of creative people just being in the same space, in the bar after a show or before a show, and supporting each other's shows and having creative conversations and coming up with new creative ideas. And, Ellie touched on the youth theatre and the work we do with the youth theatre, and they get to do a performance in the space. And Lauren, one of our youth theatre practitioners, I had a meeting with her the other day because she's got a lot of experience working with really early years children. So we're now looking at starting something weekly for parents or childminders or nannies that have toddlers sort of maybe not 0 years old, but certainly sort of up to sort of 4 or 5 years old before they start school, and how they can experience creativity, drama, all that kind of stuff in the theatre space. Because, like you said, Heather, it's not necessarily meaning that they're going to go on to have a career in theatre, but it's wonderful for expression, for communication, for developing empathy and sympathy and emotional development. And we've had Artie, he's another local professional theatre maker that has run clown workshops. And anything that we can do like that to say, come and explore, come and play, even if it's not because you want to do it professionally, it's a big part of what it means to be human, I suppose. And if we can open up a space and let people come and do the, clown workshops, even though they've got no intention of ever being a professional clown, but they want to come and play, they want to come and engage with the arts in a different way. I think it's really exciting to see that there is an appetite for that around our area. And I'm not aware, certainly, of anywhere else that offers
Neither
something
am I,
similar
to be fair. And I was saying to Ellie before we were recording that I'm starting to get it more into the Fringe theatre. And, I do find the Bridge House Theatre quite unique in what you're describing, which is wonderful. And, also what I'm hearing is, particularly for young people, making theatre accessible, because sometimes it can be seen as something very stuffy and is like, hush, hush, be quiet, whereas actually it's kind of fun. It's a fun place to be. But also, I think you're touching on very human things of storytelling, creativity, playfulness, play, artistic. So all those things are kind of coming up really from both of you, to be fair. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like quite an exciting program that you have. And I love the Penge West. And I'm definitely going to have to come to one of the performances, if not more.
Once you start, though, you won't be able to stop.
No.
Which is a good thing. It doesn't mean you shouldn't come, but you'll be back for again and again. And what are they doing this time? And what's going to happen? And this time we're writing it slightly differently. And there's going to be a writer's room, and different members of the team are going to write different episodes. So who knows? Anything could happen.
And that's the beauty of being creative, isn't it?
It's exactly what I was going to say, Heather. It's the beauty of getting creative minds together, and everybody takes something different from it. And yeah, there's something buzzy about the space, if you know what I mean. When people get in there and they feel inspired. And like our panto, for example, before the panto opens to the public, we have a number of performances just for schools groups, or we had the local scouts or the local cadets. And it's just great to get kids in to experience something like that. Well, for the teachers, it's an afternoon where they can come and sit in the dark and not worry about what the kids are doing. But also for kids, it's such a different experience being in a space like ours to being in a space like the Churchill in Bromley, where you're miles away from a stage and you are told very much like be quiet. And we do like them to be quiet at certain points, but also it's a really great opportunity for them to engage with something that's different, something that's out of their normal sort of daily routine. And I always say that panto is the gateway drug. I got into theatre through seeing a panto, and I know many other people did as well. And so to get them into their local pub theatre, their local fringe theatre, to see something that's interactive and fun and colourful and imaginative and full of music and comedy and all of this kind of stuff, it excites people, and it wakes something up perhaps in people that they don't get stimulated elsewhere. And I kind of wish we could do a longer run of the panto, and because it, once we open to the public this year, it actually sold so well, we are going to do a longer run when it comes to the panto at the end of this year. And we got feedback actually from a chap called Will. He's the writer of one of the shows that's coming to us later this season, who lives locally, and he said that he's got kids at a local school and their parents' group chat was going crazy with people talking about how good the panto was at the Bridge House. And we, take the panto quite seriously. I certainly do. I write it every year. Like I want it to be good. I want it to be better than what you'd see at the Churchill or what you'd see at Fairfield Halls in Croydon, because I think, like I said, panto is the gateway. It's the most important thing. If you get that right, people will have an engagement with the arts, hopefully, for a lifetime.
I am an acting coach, and when I coach young people, I feel exactly the same way as I do about any young person that engages with the Bridge House, whether that's through pantomime, whether that's through youth theatre or through Lauren's work. And that's it doesn't really matter whether anybody goes on to do it professionally or not. But I mean, there's so much evidence that kind of engagement with the arts in some way, specifically as an audience member, that improves kind of physical and mental health outcomes. And I think you're so much more likely to be an engaged audience member if you feel included in that and you can understand the process and you've got some level of experience of being there immediately in front of people, with people in front of you showing you how it works, and having had an experience of being part of that process yourself. And therefore, hopefully, through the work that we're doing, I hope anyway, that we will get more and more engaged audience members that feel really included in what we do. Again, just building the family, because that we would be nothing without our audiences. I think we're in the business of growing audiences as much as we are.
And I think that's so
creatives.
important, particularly, and I hate to say this, and particularly in today's world where so many things are being cut, including arts programs, or even funding to arts generally. When I grew up, I was very fortunate to have access, and my parents were able to pay for, let's say, music lessons or that sort of thing. One thing I didn't grow up with coming from Canada was pantomimes or panto. And yes, thankfully I went to school where we did go to see theater, and they kind of adjusted it a little bit, knowing their audience. It was a bit, they kind of kept it interesting for us. My first pantomime was when I first moved here many years ago, and it was up the Hackney Empire, and I thought it was the most wonderful thing I ever saw in my life. It was so much fun. And, my friends and I were a bit older, and I'm like, this is great. Like, it just engages people both. And the way it's written, it's both for young people and adults. It's not just for young people. Even adults can, there's subtleties to it that adults can get that just kids don't. And that's the beauty of pantomime, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm so passionate about it. I got, like I said, I got into theatre through panto, and it is a sort of a uniquely British thing, I think. And it does appeal to everyone. And I take so much care in writing our pantos because I want the adults to enjoy it as much as the kids. I'm not hugely keen on too much rudeness or innuendo, which I know a lot of pantomimes sort of thrive on. And certainly I've heard reports, people that have been to some real big budget pantomimes and come back and gone, it was just filth. It was just like the kids really didn't know what was going on. I'm an advocate of everybody should laugh at the same joke. The adults will laugh for one reason, the kids will laugh for another reason, but everybody's laughing at the joke. If you've got a joke that only the adults are laughing at and the kids are going, why are you laughing? That doesn't work for me. The kids should be laughing for one reason, the adults should be laughing for another. And what I've found especially is that silliness can be funny for everyone. And when you bring that silliness, that joy into people's lives, especially at like a Christmas time, that it really helps to unite people. And it is like no other art form, pantomime. It really is. And, we're blessed to be able to present a program that, includes quite a lot of different art forms, dramas, musicals, comedy, drag, physical theatre. We've got a bit of everything. And panto plays such a vital role in that when we took over the Bridge House, I was like, I want to make that our sort of flagship thing. Every Christmas, we do a panto in a 50-seat room above a pub. And we've won awards for our panto, and I'm incredibly
It's good
proud
it's
of
being
that.
recognised as well, not just the pantomime, but the theatre itself.
It is lovely that, we do work. So I'm not going to pretend we don't work hard. We do work hard. And so when, like the Fringe Theatre Awards or the Stage Plays UK or the London Pub Theatre Awards recognise the work that we're doing, because we're up against some big hitters in these things. Like when we won Pantomime of the Year for our Jack and the Beanstalk a few years ago, we were finalists alongside, I think it was the Theatre Royal Plymouth, who have a much bigger budget. I'm sure I don't need to explain that. They have a much bigger budget, a much bigger cast, and yet the judges decided that actually what we'd done, what we'd produced with 4 actors in a room above a pub was, the best of that they saw that year. So, I suppose part of the challenge for us is getting the word out that, look, what we're doing is good. And that takes time, and that takes effort, and that takes, word of mouth and all this kind of stuff. But when we do get that recognition,
I'm sure it is, and
really nice.
it's great that you're getting recognised as well. And I think that getting, and I'm sure too, getting that word out, I think it's a challenge for no matter what you do, it's getting that exposure. So my very last question, what's on the horizon? Where are you looking to work towards, or what are you trying to achieve in the next, I don't know, year, 2 years? What's on the horizon?
Everything. So we've got the spring season has just launched. The spring summer season, we're fully programmed up to the start of August. We always go dark in August, but actually, what we're planning this year is in August. Instead of having shows on, I'd like to do a month of workshops. So Artie has done his clown workshops before. It'd be great to get them back. Lauren does work with using arts and drama for people with mental health challenges, or for specifically LGBTQ plus people, or people that have had difficult living circumstances. So we're going to explore that. We've got people that are interested in running script writing workshops and various other things. So my plan at the moment is that August will become a month of workshops for the public, for people to come and engage with. Not necessarily, they're not aiming for a performance or for a finished product of anything. It's just about, again, engaging with creativity in some way that is beneficial. We're already quite programmed for the autumn season. We're getting very close to finalising every show in the autumn season. We are returning. The Panto is returning. We're going to do, and this is the first time I'm saying it publicly. This year we're going to do Robin Hood as the pantomime, and as always, it will have the Bridge House Theatre's very unique take on it. I'm not going to reveal what that is just yet, but it will be certainly not like any Robin Hood that's ever been seen. Certainly not that I've ever seen. And then this is something I've been toying with for a while. For the spring season next year, I would really like to do, and Ellie's terrible because she encourages me in this respect. I get these ideas and then people say, yeah, do it. And when maybe we shouldn't, is to do an old school repertory season where we have a company of professional actors that are contracted for a length of time, and we do a number of shows with the same cast or, members of a company that we have for that period of time, rotating the shows, rotating directors. And for a few months, we have that company that do 4, 5, whatever it is, different productions. It's pie in the sky at the moment because that takes money and it takes a lot of organisation. But I really want to do it because, I read so much about the glory days of repertory theatre, and although I never did it, I miss it. So that's my hope rather than a plan. That's my hope for
something to strive for. And Ellie, any words for anything from you?
Well, you've got a show coming up.
From the 7th to the 18th of April, I've got a show. It's called The Ills We Do. I'm trying to think what I can actually tell you about it without giving it away. But it is hopefully going to be an exciting, thrilling drama about 2 female spies played by the amazing Rebecca Pickering, who was Lady Box in The Diary of a Provincial Lady, and Mira Morrison, who I've worked with on a number of occasions at the Bridge House, but most recently in Yellow Things last April. And because it's me, it's going to have a exciting feminist message, but it's also high stakes drama, should have people on the edge of their seats. And I'm not going to tell you any more, except to book tickets. Come along.
Definitely.
And I think actually one thing I'd like to throw in here is something that Ellie's talked about with Diary of a Provincial Lady, and something that Tim from Stage Door has mentioned. It's the idea of audio drama and how we can take things that have existed in a theatrical sense and they can have a future life perhaps as an audio drama or a podcast, and record them with the actors and make them available online and things like that. And that's another thing that's potentially on the horizon, just sort of floating out there in the ether at the moment, but certainly something that we might explore.
That sounds really interesting. And, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I haven't really ever, until very recently, I just couldn't get into radio theater or audio theater until very recently. And it's like, yeah, I really, it's a very different engagement, but I really enjoy it because your imagination kind of fills in the visuals.
Absolutely. I think that the rise of the podcast has really helped with that. I remember when podcasts first came out, I was like, what is this? Why would somebody want to sit down and listen to, I'm just looking at the timer here, 45 minutes or whatever it is of people talking or whatever. There's always been a history of radio drama on like the BBC and stuff. But I'm so into my podcasts now, and I love it. And every time I'm out walking the Bridge House Theatre's chief executive, Dusty, I'm listening to a podcast. And I think people really are enjoying the fact that they can zone out from their commute or from the real world. I stick one on when I'm going to bed or if I'm in the bath or whatever else. And like you said, Heather, the imagination fills in the blanks. And sometimes that's more effective than anything you can do on film or anything you can do in a theatre space. So I think it's a really exciting thing. We've got a few shows that we've done in the past that, with some modifications and some adaptations, would be, I think, really effective audio drama.
And on that, I'd like to thank you both for being guests on my podcast. It's been wonderful speaking with you both.
Thank you, Heather. It's been great to speak to you.
Pleasure. Lovely to speak to you.
Thanks for tuning into my conversation with Luke and Ellie. The Bridge House Theatre shows how Fringe theatre can have such an impact on helping people's careers in theatre, as well as on the local community. More information on the Bridge House is in the show notes. In the next episode, I'll be speaking with Saba Suganasabasan. He's a photographer and mixed media artist who traces the intersections of memory, identity, and the Sri Lankan diaspora. You won't want to miss it.